Welcome to the Light and Shadow podcast. I am Gray, quantum informed spiritual mentor, founder of the Ethereus Academy, and creator of the Alchemical pattern to healing framework. I work at the threshold where insight alone stops working and real transformation begins. This is the space for the spiritually aware who are ready to go deeper than healing has taken them. I want to start with something that is going to sound almost too simple. You already know what you want. You already know the direction you're supposed to go. You already know which relationship is wrong, which opportunity is right, which version of your life is the one you're actually here to live. You know. You have always known. The problem is not that you do not have access to the answer. The problem is that you have two voices, and you have been following the wrong one. One voice is quiet. It doesn't argue. It doesn't justify itself. It doesn't present a case or build a logical framework or explain why it's right. It just knows. It arrives before the thinking starts, before the analysis begins, before the fear gets a word in. It is the voice that said, "Don't get on that flight," before you could explain why. The voice that said, "This person is not safe," in the first 30 seconds. The voice that said, "This is it," when you found the thing that was yours. That quiet, immediate, precognitive knowing that lives somewhere between your chest and your gut and has never once lied to you. That is your intuition. The other voice is loud. It is urgent. It has opinion about everything. It presents evidence. It catastrophizes. It runs worst-case scenarios with the dedication of a full-time job. It tells you that the desire is dangerous, that wanting is foolish, that the right choice is the one that keeps you protected from outcomes it has already decided are inevitable. It disguises itself as wisdom, as caution, as maturity, as knowing better. That is your fear. And here is what nobody tells you. These two voices sound remarkably similar. Both feel urgent. Both feel true. Both feel like they are trying to protect you. And most people, most of the time, are following their fear while calling it intuition. Making decisions from the contracted, threat-scanning, survival-oriented place, and wondering why the life they're building doesn't feel like theirs. Today we are going into the most important distinction available in the entire field of personal development and spiritual growth. How to tell the difference between intuition and fear. Precisely, reliably, and in real time. Why your intuition is the shortest path between you and everything you actually want. How thought creates reality at the quantum level, and how changing your thoughts is not a motivational platitude, but a precise, physiological, consciousness-based intervention. And what becomes available when you learn to navigate from the quiet knowing rather than from the loud alarm. This is the shortcut, the real one, and it has been available to you this entire time. So let's begin. Before we can use intuition as a navigation system, we need to understand what it actually is, because the popular understanding is both incomplete and slightly mystified in ways that make it feel less accessible than it is. Not magic, intelligence. Intuition is not a supernatural gift available only to special people. It is not the exclusive territory of psychics, healers, or people who have been meditating for 20 years. It is a biological capacity built into the architecture of the human nervous system that every human being possesses, and most human beings have learned to override. Intuition is the integrated intelligence of the entire body mind system, processing information faster than conscious thoughts can follow. It draws on every experience you have ever had, every pattern your nervous system has ever recognized, every piece of environmental information your senses have registered, including the vast majority that never reached conscious awareness. And it synthesizes all of that into a signal, a felt sense, a knowing. The gut-brain connection is not a metaphor. The enteric nervous system, the network of neurons lining the digestive tract, contains more neurons than the spinal cord. It processes information independently of the brain, communicates directly with the cranial brain through the vagus nerve, and produces neurotransmitters, including the majority of the body's serotonin. So when you feel something in your gut, when you have a gut feeling, that is not a poetic language. That is your second brain producing a response. The heart's intelligence is equally literal. The heart generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond the body, actually 6 feet to be precise. It contains approximately 40,000 neurons, enough to process information and make decisions independently of the brain. The HeartMath Institute's research demonstrates that the heart actually receives information about future events before the brain does, that the heart responds to stimuli before they consciously occur. The heart knowing that every tradition has described is a cardiac neuroscience. Intuition is the integrated output of this entire system. The gut brain, the cardiac brain, the somatic nervous system, and the cranial brain working together, producing a signal that is often faster, broader, and more accurate than conscious analytical thinking alone. So if intuition is this sophisticated, this accurate, and this biologically fundamental, why do most people override it so consistently? Because we were trained to. Western educational systems, professional culture, and rational materialist worldview have spent centuries teaching human beings that the only valid form of knowing is analytical, logical, evidence-based thinking. That feelings are unreliable, that the body cannot be trusted, that the quiet knowing must be verified by the loud analysis before it is acted upon. And because the people who taught us this were often the people whose approval we needed, like parents or teachers, institutions, we internalized their skepticism of our inner knowing as our own. We learned to dismiss the signal before we even fully received it, to explain it away, to wait for external validation of something that was never designed to require external validation. And in the absence of the intuitive signal, in the silence where the quiet knowing used to speak, fear moved in. Loud, urgent, logical-sounding fear, filling the navigation role that intuition was always designed to fill. Steering the life not toward what the soul came here for, but away from what the threat assessment system has decided is dangerous. The result is a life built on avoidance rather than desire, on protection rather than expression, on managed risk rather than genuine living. And most people don't realize this is happening because fear is very good at sounding like wisdom. So we need to be precise about fear because not all fear is the enemy of good decision making and conflating genuine threat detection with the ego's chronic anxiety produces its own problems. There is fear that is a genuine biological alarm, the somatic response to actual present moment threat. For example, you are walking down a dark street and something shifts in your body. You are in a conversation and your nervous system suddenly activates. Or you reach for something and your hand pulls back involuntarily. This is the body's threat detection system working correctly. It is fast, somatic, and present tense. And interestingly, this kind of genuine threat detection is almost indistinguishable from intuition in its quality. Both are immediate, both are precognitive, and both are somatic. Real threat detection and genuine intuition speak the same language, the language of the body in the present moment. And then there is the other kind of fear, the chronic, narrative, future-oriented anxiety that constitutes the majority of most people's fearful experience. The fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of success, the fear of being too much or not enough, the fear of what people would think, the fear of the unknown, the fear of losing what you have, the fear of never getting what you want. The list goes on. This fear does not live in the present moment. It lives in the future, in imagined outcomes, in projected disasters, in the elaborate construction of worst-case scenarios that have not happened and may never happen. It is the ego survival system running threat assessment on possibilities rather than actualities. And this fear, this chronic, narrative, future-oriented fear, is not a navigation tool. It is a bias, a filter, a lens that consistently distorts the view in a specific direction, away from the unknown, away from vulnerability, away from anything that requires you to grow beyond your current comfort zone. The problem is not that this fear exists. The problem is that most people use it as their primary decision-making system. They ask, what am I afraid of? And then they navigate away from it, calling the navigation wisdom, calling the avoidance discernment, calling the contraction a boundary. Fear-based navigation has a specific and recognizable outcome. A life that is progressively smaller. A life where the boundaries of the safe zone get tighter over time as each avoided risk confirms the fear's premise that the world outside the comfort zone is dangerous. A life that feels managed rather than lived. Controlled rather than expressed. Survivable rather than genuinely yours. Here is the most important thing to understand about fear in the navigation context, and the thing that makes distinguishing it from intuition generally difficult. Fear is not always experienced as fear. In the navigation context, fear almost never announces itself as fear. It announces itself as reason. For example, the logical analysis clearly shows that this is not the right time. Caution, for example, I just want to be careful. I'm just being responsible. Or discernment. I have learned from experience that things like this do not work out. Or humility. For example, who am I to think I could do something like that? and practicality. I need to be realistic about what's actually possible. Protection of others. I would pursue this, but I need to think about the impact on the people around me. Every single one of these can be genuine, and every single one of them can be fear in disguise. So the tell is not the content of the reasoning. The tell is the feeling underneath it and the direction it consistently points, which is always, without exception, away from the thing that would require you to expand. The ability to distinguish these two voices in real time, in the moment of decision, in the moment of choice, is the single most valuable navigational skill available. So the most fundamental distinction between intuition and fear is not on their content, but in their quality, their texture, the felt sense of each. Intuition feels like knowing. Fear feels like alarm. Intuition arrives with a quality of stillness underneath it, even when it is pointing towards something significant, something challenging, something that will require everything you have. There is a quality of settledness in genuine intuition, a sense of, this is true. Not comfortable, necessarily, not easy, but true. Fear arrives with the quality of urgency and contraction. It feels pressing. It needs you to act now, or more often, to not act now, to wait, to hold back, to stay where you are until it is safe. It tightens the chest, shortens the breath, accelerates the thought. It has the quality of alarm, of something that needs to be resolved immediately before you can settle. Intuition expands, fear contracts. This is the most reliable physical marker available. When you receive a genuine intuitive signal, even when it is pointing towards something uncertain, something vulnerable, something that requires a leap, there is an expansion in the body, an opening. Sometimes it is subtle, but it is unmistakable once you know to feel for it. When fear is generating the signal, even when the fear is dressed as caution, as wisdom, as protection, there is a contraction, a tightening, a drawing inward. The body is protecting itself from a perceived threat. So notice your body's response. Is it opening or closing? That is your first reliable data point. Intuition arrives first, before the thinking, before the analysis, before the story. You receive the information, for example, the person, the opportunity, the situation, and there is an immediate precognitive response, a flash, a knowing, before your mind has had a chance to evaluate, compare, analyze, or explain. Fear arrives after. It is a response to the intuitive signal, specifically to the part of the intuitive signal that threatens the ego's comfort zone. The sequence is, intuition says yes, and then fear arrives to argue against the yes. Or, intuition says no, and fear arrives to argue that you should force yourself to do it anyway, because saying no will cost you something. When you trace the sequence back, when did the knowing arrive and when did the argument start? You will almost always find the intuition first and the fear as a response to it. The fear is not originating the navigation. It is interfering with it. Genuine intuitive knowing is consistent. It does not change based on your mood, your anxiety level, or the quality of your sleep. It does not reverse itself based on what someone else tells you. It does not disappear and reappear. It is a signal that has a quality of ground, stable, consistent, and present. Fear is inconsistent. It escalates and de-escalates based on your emotional state, your energy level, and what you have been exposed to. It can be temporarily quieted by reassurance, by distraction, by the right conversation, and then it comes back. Because it was never actually the signal. It was the static around it. If the knowing changes significantly when you are well rested versus exhausted, when you are calm versus anxious, when you are alone versus with a particular person, it is more likely to be emotional state than genuine intuition. Real intuition maintains its quality across states. Genuine intuition is almost always in the direction of your deepest desire, not your surface desire, not what the ego wants for comfort or status or safety, but your deepest desire, the one that precedes the fear, the one that was present before you decided it was impossible, the one that has been there since childhood, since the earliest moments of selfhood, quietly pointing in a direction that your life has not yet fully followed. Fear is almost always pointing away from that desire, specifically and consistently away from it. Fear's navigation reliability leads away from growth, away from expression, away from the fullness of the life your soul actually came here to live. So when you are trying to distinguish intuition from fear, one of the most useful questions you can ask is, which direction does this signal point me? Toward the life that feels fully mine or away from it? Toward is usually intuition. Away is usually fear. Here's a practice. The actual real-time practice of building the capacity to distinguish these two voices. Pause before deciding. The most important thing you can do in a moment of apparent conflict between intuition and fear is refuse to make the decision from within the urgency. Fear creates urgency. Intuition does not need urgency. It is already there. So when you feel the pressure to decide immediately, that pressure is almost always fear. Genuine intuition will still be there after you pause. So ask the body before you ask the mind. Before you analyze, before you make the pros and cons list, before you call the friend for advice, ask your body. Bring the decision into your awareness and feel what happens in your chest, in your gut, in your throat. The expansion or contraction is data. Start there. Notice what was there first, before the argument, before the justification, before the fear's case was presented. What was there? What did you know before you started thinking about it? Go back to that first moment of contact with the decision. What did you feel before the analysis began? That is the intuitive signal. So ask yourself, what would I choose if I were not afraid? This question does not eliminate the fear, but it separates the navigation from the fear's influence long enough to hear the intuitive signal beneath it. If the answer to that question is immediate and clear, if you know exactly what you would choose if fear were not a factor, that is your intuition speaking. And develop a track record. Start small. Make small decisions from intuition rather from analysis and fear. Notice what happens. Build the body of evidence that your intuitive signal is reliable, because it is, and the evidence will confirm it. So, as the track record builds, the capacity to trust the signal in larger decisions grows. So, now let's talk about why intuition specifically is the shortest path between you and what you want. Not just a better decision making tool, but the most efficient navigation system available for the life you're trying to build. Your desires are not random, they are not arbitrary preferences generated by conditioning and circumstance alone. At the deepest level, beneath the surface wants, beneath the ego's impulses, beneath the things you think you want, because the culture told you to want them, your deepest desires are the soul's curriculum pointing at itself. The desire to create something, to build something, to love deeply, to be genuinely known, to contribute something that matters, to live in a way that is fully, authentically yours. These desires are directional. They point toward a specific expression of the specific soul that you are. They are the soul's navigation system for the life it came here to live. Intuition is the access point to the directional desire. It is the mechanism through which the soul's direction translates into the felt sense of knowing in the body mind. When intuition says yes, when there is the expansion, the quiet knowing, the sense of this is mine, it is because the soul's direction and the present opportunity are in alignment. Fear is a mechanism through which you miss the alignment, through which you walk past the open door, because the fear's threat assessment concluded it was dangerous, through which you say no to the right thing and yes to the comfortable thing, and then wonder why the comfortable thing consistently fails to satisfy. The shortcut principle is this. Every time you follow genuine intuition, rather than fear-based navigation, you are moving in the direction of the life you actually want to be living, not in the direction of the life that is safest, not in the direction of the life that is most comfortable, but in the direction of the life that is yours. This means the path is shorter because you are not taking the detours that fear's navigation demands. You are not spending 3 years in the wrong relationship because fear said leaving was too risky. You are not spending a decade in the wrong career because fear said the right one was too uncertain. You are not holding back the expression, the creation, the connection that you came here for because fear said it was not safe to be seen. Every fear-based decision is a detour. Every intuition-based decision is a direct route. The accumulation of intuition-based choices produces a life that is recognizably, authentically yours. Not the life that was the safest approximation of what you wanted, but the actual thing. Because you have been navigating toward it consistently rather than away from what might threaten it. Fear's promise is that it will keep you safe. That by avoiding the uncertain, the vulnerable, the exposed, it will protect you from pain and loss and failure. But examine the track record. Has fear-based navigation actually produced the life you want? Has avoiding the uncertain actually made you feel safer? Or has it made your world smaller while the anxiety remains constant, regardless of how much you have managed to protect? Has saying no to the thing you actually wanted actually protected you from pain? Or has it produced a different and slower pain? The pain of the unlived life. Fear's promise is false. Not because bad things don't happen when you take risks. They do. Not because vulnerability is without cost. It has real costs. But because the cost of following fear consistently is always greater than the cost of following intuition, including when the intuition leads you somewhere difficult. The person who followed their intuition into the wrong relationship, who got hurt, is better positioned for the right relationship than the person who let fear prevent them from risking real intimacy at all. The person who followed their intuition into the failed business, who lost money and had to start over, is closer to the right work than the person who stayed in the safe job for 20 years waiting for certainty that never came. Failure in the direction of your genuine desire is progress. Comfort in the direction away from your desire is stagnation. And stagnation, over time, is its own form of destruction, slower and less visible, but equally real. So now, let's go into the dimension of this conversation that connects the navigation of intuition to the actual mechanics of how reality is created. Because this is not motivational speaking. This is physics. Quantum mechanics, the most precisely verified scientific theory in human history, demonstrates something about the nature of reality that should have fundamentally restructured our understanding of human consciousness and its relationship to the world. The observer effect. At a quantum level, particles do not have definite properties until they are observed. Prior to observation, particles exist as waves of probability, superpositions of multiple possible states simultaneously. The act of observation, the interaction between consciousness and the quantum system, collapses the wave function. Probability becomes actuality. Possibility becomes specific experience. This is the foundational experimental reality of quantum physics. And its implication that consciousness participates in the determination of physical reality rather than merely observing it is one of the most significant and least widely integrated discoveries in the history of science. The ancient mystics described this principle in their own language. Consciousness precedes matter. Mind creates reality. As above, so below. As within, so without. The Hermetic axiom that the universe is mental. These were not pre-scientific guesses. They were descriptions of a reality that physics has since confirmed. Your thoughts, the specific quality of your consciousness, the patterns of your attention and belief and expectations, are not neutral observations of a fixed reality. They are participatory. They are influencing the field. The quantum field that underlies all physical reality responds to the quality of the consciousness that is observing it. At the neurological level, before we even get to the quantum, there is a mechanism in the brain that makes the change your thoughts change your reality principle immediately observably true. The RAS, the reticular activating system, is a network of neurons in the brainstem that acts as the brain's primary filter. Your brain receives approximately 11 million bits of sensory information per second. Your conscious mind can process approximately 40 to 50 bits per second. The RAS is the mechanism that decides which 40 bits you consciously experience from the 11 million available. It decides based on what you have told it to look for it, based on your dominant thoughts, your beliefs, your fears, your desires, based on your neural patterns that have been most consistently reinforced in your system. The person whose dominant thought pattern is scarcity literally does not perceive opportunities that are objectively present in their environment. The RAS has filtered them out as irrelevant. The person whose dominant thought pattern is a threat literally perceives danger in situations that are objectively neutral. The RAS has highlighted the threat-relevant information and suppressed everything else. Change the thought pattern. Change what the RAS is filtering for, and you change what you perceive. And what you perceive is, for all practical purposes, your reality. This is neuroscience. The person who begins to genuinely hold the thought pattern of abundance, not as a performance, but as an actual neurological shift in dominant belief, begins to perceive opportunities they were previously filtering out. The world has not changed. Their perception of it has. And their perception of it is what they act on, respond to, and build their life from. So your beliefs are not abstract mental positions. They are neural architectures, specific patterns of the synaptic connection that have been reinforced through repetition until they fire automatically below the threshold of conscious awareness. When you believe at the deep, automatic, below conscious level that you are not worthy of love, every interaction is processed through that neural filter. Evidence that confirms the belief is amplified. Evidence that contradicts it is explained away, minimized, or simply not perceived. The belief self-confirms, not because it is true, but because the neural architecture selectively processes experience to support its own continuance. This is the mechanism through which thought creates reality at the neurological level. Not by changing the external world directly, but by determining which aspects of the external world you interact with, respond to, and build upon. And here's a crucial connection to intuition. A fear-based thought architecture filters out the intuitive signal. The person whose nervous system is chronically activated by threat-based thinking cannot hear the quiet voice of genuine intuition because the system is too full of noise. The static of chronic fear-based thinking drowns out the signal of the soul's direction. So changing your thoughts, specifically shifting from fear-based to intuition-aligned thought patterns, is not just about feeling better. It is about clearing the channel, about reducing the noise until the signal can be heard, about restoring access to the navigation system that was always there, beneath the fear, pointing the direction of the life you actually came here to live. At the quantum level, here's what happens when thought, emotion, intention, and action are all aligned. When you are thinking, feeling, intending, and acting from the same place without the internal contradiction of wanting one thing and believing another, your field becomes coherent. In quantum physics, coherence is the state in which the wave functions of a system are aligned, oscillating in phase with each other, reinforcing rather than canceling each other out. A coherent quantum system has properties that an incoherent system does not. It behaves as a unified whole rather than as a collection of random individual components. So a coherent human being, one whose thoughts, emotions, intentions, and actions are all aligned with their deepest desire and their intuitive knowing, resonate with the quantum field in ways that an incoherent human being cannot. The opportunities, the people, the circumstances that match the coherent state are drawn into the field of experience through resonance. This is what the law of attraction is actually describing, stripped of its oversimplifications and misinterpretations. Not that positive thinking produces material results through some vague universe ordering mechanism, but that coherent consciousness, the alignment of thought, emotion, intention, and action around a genuine desire, produces a specific quality of field resonance that interacts with the quantum field in specific directional ways. An intuition is a navigation system that points toward coherence. Following genuine intuition aligns the system. Fear-based navigation misaligns it, creates the internal contradiction of wanting one thing and moving toward another. And the incoherence is not just experiential, it is energetic. It creates the static that disrupts both the reception of the intuitive signal and the resonance of the field. Now let's be precise about what to change your thoughts actually means, because the popular presentation of this idea as simply deciding to think more positively misses the real mechanism entirely. Thought change that produces reality change is not surface level positive thinking. It is not affirmation repeated without felt sense. It is not the suppression of negative thoughts through the forced installation of positive ones. The neural architecture of belief does not change through repetition alone. It changes through the combination of repetition and genuine felt experience. So the process is this. First, identify the fear-based thought pattern that is currently running. Specifically, not generically. For example, I believe that if I fully commit to this, I will fail and be humiliated. Or I believe that I do not deserve the kind of love I actually want. Or I believe that financial abundance is not available to someone like me. So get precise. The vague acknowledgement of negativity does not produce change. The precise identification of the specific fear-based belief does. Second, trace it to its origin. Not to wallow in the past, but because the neural architecture of a belief was installed at a specific moment, through a specific experience, a specific relationship, a specific repeated message. Knowing where it came from is the beginning of knowing that it is not objectively true, that it was a conclusion drawn from a specific limited set of circumstances, not a fact. Third, find the evidence against it. Not the wishful evidence, the actual, factual evidence that the belief is not universally true. The times the feared outcome did not occur, the times you succeeded where you expected to fail, the times the love was available, the abundance was present, the risk paid off. The neural architecture of belief changes when the counter evidence is genuinely repeatedly brought into conscious focus. Fourth, install the replacement through felt experience, not just thought. This is the key. The new thought must be paired with a genuine felt sense of its truth in the body, even if in imagination. When you think, I am capable of this, you must feel what it would feel like in your body to be capable of this. The felt sense is what causes the neural architecture to update. Thought without felt sense is information. Thought with felt sense is experience. And the brain updates its architecture based on experience, not information. Fifth and final one is follow the intuition that the new belief makes accessible. Because here's the cycle. Changing the thought clears the channel. The intuitive signal becomes more audible. You follow it. It works. The experience confirms the new belief at the deepest level. The neural architecture updates further, and the channel clears further. Action on intuition is the fastest way to consolidate thought change into permanent neural reconstructuring. Now let's talk about the other side. When you have developed enough capacity to distinguish intuition from fear, when you have done enough when you have done enough thought work to clear the channel, and you begin to navigate primarily from intuitive knowing rather than from fear-based avoidance, something becomes available that cannot be arrived at any other way. The life that is actually yours. Not the life that is the safest approximation of what you wanted. Not the life that is the most defended version of your desire. Not the life that was built by taking the long way around every risk, every vulnerability, every expansion that fear told you was dangerous. The actual life. The one your soul came here for. The one where your work is genuinely yours. Your relationships are genuinely deep. Your expression is genuinely free. And the sense of being in the right place, doing the right thing, which most people experience only in rare moments, becomes the baseline rather than the exception. Decisions become faster, not reckless. Faster. Because you are no longer running every decision through the elaborate threat assessment machinery of chronic fear. The signal is clear. The knowing is there. Boom, you act on it. Opportunities become visible. The ones that the RAS was previously filtering out because the dominant thought pattern was not aligned with receiving them. The right people appear. The right doors open. Not because the universe has changed, but because you have changed. What you are perceiving, what you are resonating with, what you are allowing yourself to recognize as meant for you. The relationship to uncertainty shifts. Fear made uncertainty intolerable because uncertainty meant uncontrolled threat. Intuition makes uncertainty navigable because you have a compass that does not require certainty to function. You do not need to know how it will work out. You know which direction to move, and that is enough. And perhaps, most significantly, you stop wasting energy. The enormous energetic cost of chronic fear-based navigation, the constant threat scanning, the elaborate risk assessment, the internal conflict between what you want and what you're allowing yourself to move toward, the cost disappears. The energy that was consumed by the fear machinery becomes available for the actual living of the life. So here's what happens over time when intuition-based navigation becomes your primary operating system. Each intuition followed produces an experience. The experience either confirms or refines the intuitive capacity. The track record of following intuition and arriving at the right place, even when the right place was difficult, even when it required everything, builds the trust and the signal that makes the next intuition easier to follow. Trust and intuition compounds. Every followed intuition makes the next one more accessible. Every fear-based detour avoided keeps the channel cleaner. Every thought changed in the direction of genuine belief rather than performed positivity makes the signal clearer. Over time, the person who has been consistently navigating from intuition is living a different life from the person who has been navigating from fear. Not because they were luckier, not because they had better circumstances, because they were following a different compass, one that points towards a life that is theirs, consistently, reliably, without the detours. That compass is available to you right now. It has always been available. The fear was loud. The training was thorough. The override was so practiced it became invisible. But the signal was always there, beneath the noise, pointing home. Your intuition is not a luxury. It is the most direct route available between where you are and everything you actually want. Your fear is not your protector. It is the detour. And your thoughts are not neural observations of a fixed reality. They are the filter, the field, and the architecture of the life you are building in every moment. Change the thought, clear the channel, follow the quiet knowing. That is the shortcut. That has always been the shortcut. If you're ready to do this work at the deepest level, to actually distinguish the signal from the noise and build a life navigated by genuine intuitive knowing, the Ethereus Academy and the Alchemical Pattern to Healing Framework are where that work lives. Everything you need is in the show notes below. Until next time.